Part
in a
of the
long time.
reason why these companies exaggerate AI is because they don't want to be regulated. So they want to say, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to humans. It's going to improve productivity so much, make our lives so much better. So the last thing we need is any regulation because the benefits are so huge. We don't want to stop this when it isn't really true. And really, and you could argue that many of the harms that are coming from AI right now are bigger than the benefits.
Well, and this comes to the, I guess, the global scale of what we're dealing with here too, right? Because it's all well and good if, say, the US regulates AI or Australia does, but what's China doing? What's Russia doing? We know that we've got malicious state actors that are putting out, they're operating in memetic warfare. That is the sphere of
But
global
isn't
warfare.
that true of every part of business, Leschia? I mean, really, we have different laws here around double jeopardy to what they do in the US to what they do in the UK. There's different laws around this, there's different laws around that. I don't know. I don't subscribe to the, we should do it because they are, or we shouldn't do it because they're not. I think every sovereign nation needs to make its own decision about, what it doesn't need and how prescriptive that legislation might be. Because as soon as you start getting super prescriptive, then suddenly you've got a group of people deciding for a nation. There's a leader that we all know in the US that has just told the big large language model makers not to include anything about climate change, not to include anything about diversity. Suddenly he's setting an agenda that actually, if we're all using those models globally, he's setting an agenda for us. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting balance.
Yeah, and I think that is precisely the point, right? And even just getting back to what Teal said or supposedly said, the question of regulation then comes down to who is doing the regulating.
Mm.
Because right now, as you probably all know, we are not just dealing with external regulation from governments, but also from the makers of the AI themselves. So we know that there are system prompts, different models. There are open models that disclose those, so what the back end agenda is. But I've actually been, I've uncovered that myself just in use of AI, of what some of those forbidden topics are, and Rob, as you might know, you can use all kinds of techniques, and there are old sort of cybersecurity techniques that you can use to, I guess, get around some of those internal guardrails with the AI models. But it's a great point, Simon, right? Because who is doing the regulating? Who's telling those models what they can and cannot say? And that in effect is creating meaning for people. And one of the things that I see is a problem of discernment, right? There are people that will just listen to what those models tell them and take it as fact.
And that's no different, is it, than the news, for example, because the tools that we use uh, are regulated in different ways. And yes, we might have uh, we might have the likes of ChatGPT being influenced, but equally, I could be sat here in the UK using DeepSeek, which I know is influenced by the Chinese government and what they want their systems to say or not say. And people use individual systems in the same way that they have their preferred or default news source, and all of a sudden they're getting fed whatever the views of that organization are. And then we
Yeah,
and
absolutely. I mean, this is something that and you hear about this a lot, but I see it really as mirroring society. But the difference with AI, I suppose, and a traditional news source is the exponential ability to process data and to have output that is so much higher than anything that we've seen before, and to really infiltrate and create things that it's really almost impossible to tell if it's real or not at this point.